Hi friends, hello! Happy Friday. Holy smokes, it's Friday. There were a couple little techie issues coming in this morning, but we are here. Hello, hello. So happy to see everybody popping in. It is a crazy morning. So I'm glad to be back. I missed last week because I had an ear infection and I still actually have it. It's a pretty big one, but it's getting better. It's getting better. So I see people popping in. Kathy, hi Sue, and Gloria. It's good to see everybody. So yeah, I'm a little bit earlier today than normal. Normally it's 11:30. Today I'm at 11. There's a lot of things going on the interwebs today, lots of different classes and things. So I know that we have a lot of our friends that might be participating in other things today, but that's okay. We still have it on the replay. So welcome to Craft Your Joy Live. I'm super excited. It's a rainy day in Maryland. Hi Wendy. Hi Michelle. Okay, so today I've got a really fun stamp set mashup. I feel like it's time to start talking about some spring flowers. So we're going to mash up two of my stamp sets from my Gina K Designs collection, Wildflowers and Weeds and Be Encouraged. And today we're going to talk a little bit more of using Inktense. We're going to talk a little bit more about Inktense. I know that in the last couple lives that I did, it was kind of requested that everybody wanted to kind of just have some fun with Inktense again. So everybody's popping in saying ear infections are crummy. They are the worst. The worst. And in Maryland, we haven't had a really, really hard enough winter. Like, we didn't get a big snow. We didn't get a good, it's been cold, but not super frosty, in my opinion. So it really didn't kind of help out with killing everything off so that we could regenerate. So I've had a lot of sinus issues, not going to lie. But anyway, okay. All right, friends. I have all of the supplies that we're using today linked down below in the description. If you're watching me on Facebook, they're linked there as well. I am streaming into YouTube and Facebook, but I never really know how the Facebook thing works out. So, um, okay, we're going to head to the down camera. I'm going to do a real quick walkthrough of the supplies, and then we're going to get started. We're going to talk about the card we're going to make today. We're going to do a little bit of watercolor, of course. Okay, let's go ahead and take a peek. Okay, here is the card project that we're going to make today. Let's do a quick little adjustment here. Here's the card project we're going to make today. Super fun, easygoing watercolor. And I'm mashing up these two stamp sets. Oops, hello. Be Encouraged and Wildflowers and Weeds. I love this stamp set from my collection because of this big happy faced pansy. And we're going to do something with that pansy and the hydrangea blooms that are in the Be Encouraged set. So super fun, easygoing watercoloring with that. And we're going to use the mug from Be Encouraged and do a little bit of a fun watercolor technique with Inktense blocks. So I'm going to bring out the Inktense. I am using these colors of Inktense. I'm using Inktense pencils today, and I'm using a block. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to use this block as my stamping ink. And here are the pencils that I have. I'm using pencils that are nice and super sharp. We're going to talk a little bit about Inktense. I've got several tutorials on this channel that talk about Inktense, but here are the colors I'm using. Lagoon, Thistle. It's either going to be, Sun Yellow is going to be our stamping ink for our mug, and I'm either going to be using Sienna Gold or Sicilian Yellow. I'm not sure. I haven't decided. They're very similar in nature, but in color, but I'm not sure what I'm going to use yet. Okay, my inks for my Gina K, I'm going to use Prickly Pear, and here's why. Prickly Pear, it's such a great color, and it goes really well with Sienna Gold and Sicilian Yellow from the Inktense line. I've got Fresh Asparagus. This is going to be my dark green, and I'm using Obsidian for my sentiment and for my flowers. Decided to go with the black for the flowers because all of my other colors, so fresh asparagus is a warm color, prickly pear is a warm color, fresh asparagus, prickly pear, sun yellow, they're all really, really warm colors. And the colors that we're going to be using for coloring in the flowers are really cool, like cool colors. So I'm using the black outlines of the stamp just to add a little bit of contrast and pop to the project. So, okay, the paper stocks I'm using Strathmore Ready Cut Watercolor, love, and I'm using Gina K Designs Jelly Bean Green as my card base. Okay. I've got some Connect glue, which I refilled, friends, because I was down to just a little bit, really just a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to get started with the mug first, and then we're going to do the flowers. So I took some advice from all of you. And remember when I've die cut things in the past and I'm trying to color them and they just kind of move all over the place? So this time I've pre-die cut our pieces. So I have stamped out my pansy and the two of the larger hydrangeas, one of the smaller. And I've got this, this purple tape from Thermoweb, which is going to hold my images down while I stamp, while I do the coloring. So we'll get to that in a moment. Let's go ahead and pull that out. Gloria just asked a question, is obsidian the amalgam ink? Yes, here's the obsidian. It is the amalgam ink. And the reason why I'm using that is because I'm working with Inktense, and Inktense is water soluble, but it is, it's an ink. So and I don't want my stamped images to move, so it's perfect to work with watercolor projects. Okay, I'm bringing out a piece of the Strathmore Ready Cut Watercolor, and I want to talk a little bit about Inktense. Some of you, and I'm recognizing names, who've been in here before when I've talked about using Inktense in the past. So Derwent Inktense are very, very similar to watercolor pencils, but they have a different property in them that when they dry, they're permanent, so you can't move the color. And they are called Inktense because I believe they're really super intense in color. So they work very much like a pencil, so you can, like a colored pencil, and we've done colored pencil tutorials on here on this channel before. You can see I can lay down the color. When I'm laying down color, I'm always holding my, I'm a lefty, as you all know, I'm always holding my work out a little further so that I can use the side of the pencil. If I use the tip of the pencil, and you really want your pencil to be sharp, it'll scratch into the fibers of the paper. If I really go at it, and I know I'm heavy-handed, it'll scratch into the fibers of the paper, and I really don't want that. When I want an even coverage of color, I always hold the pencil pretty far out, and I hold it on its side. Now, let me grab my water here. Get a little bit of water. I also have some brushes that I'm going to be using. I'm using the Princeton Heritage brushes. This is just a round brush, and it's not super thirsty. So it holds water, yes, but it isn't going to be super washy. So it's really going to help support the technique that I want to do today, which is a little bit more of a controlled watercolor. So I'm coming back and just kind of showing you how just touching it with just a little bit of water breaks up that pigment, that ink, because it's ink, breaks it up and makes it super, super smooth. And oh, I just love it. I just love it. Kathy said, I'm glad we could teach you something rather than the other way around. Yes, I learn a lot from you guys. When I ask questions, I feel like, oh, I should know that, but I really don't. So Look how beautiful that is. One of the things I really do enjoy about Inktense is the level of intensity and the big color payout that you get from using these pencils and blocks. And also, getting a little closer here, the little bits of granulation that you get from this medium. It works very much like other watercolor pencils or watercolor paint. I can do a lot of the same techniques. This is lifting. Remember, we've done lifting recently on this channel. I can lift away the color. While it's still wet, I can make it move. But you can see it's starting to dry and it doesn't want to move. But while it's still wet, I can make it move. And I can drop other colors into it. But once it's fully dry, it's permanent, it's light fast. And the other thing that I think is brilliant about Inktense is that you can use it on other mediums other than paper. So fabrics, if you're a quilter or a fiber artist in some way, or you do a lot of embroidery or different things, you can use these colors, these mediums on canvas, fabric, all those fun things. So, but here's the super fun thing that I like about using the blocks. Now, the blocks are great. They're really heavy duty. They come in sets of 12, 24, 36, 72. Same with the pencils. And pop a little comment. Pop something in the comments if you already own these. And I know many of you do. You already own these and you've experimented with them. The other thing about the blocks that I like is that you can just kind of lift color up right from it and use it like a pan set. And look at how beautiful and bright that color is. Oh, I just love that. Love it. Or you can use it, you know, to get a large wash of color. Or if some of you are like to do art journaling and things like that, these are great in art journals. I just love Inktense. And I love talking about them because they're just so, look at that color. I was really able to get that color to disperse. And it doesn't leave, look, I can continue to use it. Michelle just shared, I own these and need to use them more. Get them out. Whenever you're thinking about doing a project with watercolor, get them out and play with them. I really love them. Now today, we're going to get started. I'm going to do two different techniques. We're going to do oh, I just got a little bloop of something on my cardstock. Oopsie. We're going to do some color mixing right on the paper with the pencils, and we're going to use the block as a stamping ink. So I'm going to answer a quick question. Kathy just said, is that a watercolor stick or a pastel? Okay, this is a Derwent Inktense stick. So it's not a pastel, so it's basically what's in the pencil, but in stick form. And they come in big honkin' sets. So I'll bring it in and show it to you. You can buy them like open stock in art supply stores, but they come in like a big set. This is 2-tiered. So you can see like, I'll pop this out. A lot of times when I'm using them, so you can see, this is 72 and it's a 2-tiered set. So you can pop in, you can use this as like your wells and pop some color over here. You could break these up if you wanted and put them in little pans and put them in a pan set. Derwent also makes the pan sets, which I'll grab those and I know I've showed those to you guys on this channel before. But a lot of times I'll just leave this sitting out and I just dip my wet brush into the color and I just start painting with it. But today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do something a little different. Okay, with them. And hopefully it works. I've done it many times, but you know, you never know. Okay, Sue just shared I have a half a dozen Inktense pencils that she bought as singles. That's a great way to start. Because you're getting to know, just pick a handful of colors that you like and give it a go and try it and see if you like it. All right, I'm going to grab the little wonky the wonky mug. Wilma just shared, I don't have the Inktense, but your videos may talk me into trying them. I don't like to be like a super enabler because I get enabled. I have everything. I get enabled pretty easily. But I like to share. This is where what I like to do. I like to share with you all of the different things you can do with one medium. If you've made the investment in these, there's so many different things that you can do. And I get my most joy from sharing the techniques and sharing like finds and things that I have experimented with them. Cherie, how did they compare to the Tim Holtz watercolor pencils? Cherie, I know you asked me that question too, and I direct messaged you back about it. They are different. And the reason why is because these are ink. The Tim Holtz watercolor pencils are watercolor pigment. The vibrancy, same. And I'll grab those real quick since you asked that question. Maybe. I may be grabbing them. Here we go. And I have gotten the Tim Holtz watercolor pencils out before and talked about them. But here, I'll grab one real quick so that you can see. So this is Fired Brick. The thing I like about the watercolor pencils from Tim Holtz is that they're very, they feel good in your hands. They're very heavy. Now, you know, this is Fired Brick. His pencils are engineered colorways to go with the inks, which I have all the inks and they're fantastic. But these work like watercolor. Inktense works like watercolor, but they're not as they're not ink, and that's really the only difference as far as if you're looking to make an investment in what's going to work for you and what is you know, budget friendly for you. He has 4 different sets. You can't go wrong. Like each one of us, I think I like set number 1 and number 2 the best because they have the most vibrant colors in them. But his colors are engineered, the colors and the pigments in the colors have been designed to go with seamlessly with the distress inks. The Inktense, different animal, only because they are permanent when dry and they are ink, which makes them a little bit unique and different. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Cherie. Okay, here is my mug, and we're going to start with their card base. So I have used the Master Layouts die to cut my card base, and that's linked down below in the description, and that just gives me that nice little 1/4 inch around my A2 card size. So I'm going to come in, and I'm just going to lightly mist my stamp. Lightly mist my stamp. And the only reason why I'm doing that is because I am going to take my Inktense block and I'm just going to run it over it. And I'm using my Inktense block as my stamping ink. And here's why. We're going to go ahead and stamp that down. Get that in the frame really nicely for you. Turning it sideways. I'm just giving it a little bit of pressure. And now, while it is wet, I am going to start using that paint. And I'll answer some questions. So I'm using what's here, and I'm going to just try to work with what's here. So I'm moving it around a little bit. Then I'm going to add some more. I'm not going to worry about the inside of the cup. But you can see I can soften that line so it's almost going to disappear when we're finished. I'm going to come in and just kind of continue to paint. I'm adding a little bit of water, keeping everything really wet, keeping the Inktense moving. And the reason why I'm using this yellow is because it's sunny. It's called Sun Yellow. I love it. I'm going to move the block over here. Sue just asked a quick question. Have you used the Dina Wakley watercolor crayons? I have a set of them and haven't used them much at all. I find they don't color well. I actually haven't used them, Sue, but I'll take a peek. I'll look into them. I haven't used them. The watercolor crayons, there are many different brands of watercolor crayons. They work really well. You have to be a little bit of a lighter hand. They're great for bigger washes, but they're also like a crayon, so they can be sometimes feel a little crumbly. It depends on the brand, but I know that Dina Wakley's line is very like mixed media and works really well with like acrylic paints and gessos and things like that. So I know that they'll work really well for texture. All right, I'm dropping a little bit of the Inktense block into my water, and I'm just going to kind of swoosh it over. I'm just using my brush and just swooshing it over a little bit. I am going to leave some paper, some white of the paper, but I'm going to work with this little bit of the yellow from the block. I'm just lifting it up right from the block and drop in some of that intensity right here. So if you have the crayons, you should just get them out and play with them. Also, I would check Dina's website and her blog. I know, and the Ranger site and Dina's YouTube channel. I know that she has probably shared a lot of different tutorials using her products. She's brilliant. She is brilliant. So you can see I'm working wet into wet, and I'm just dropping that Inktense in. Now, we've talked a lot about watercolor on this channel, and I've talked about how wet into wet techniques, where my brush is wet, my paper is wet, and sometimes we'll drop watercolor in, and it'll go whoosh across the page. Inktense doesn't do that. Inktense stays where you put it. I'm going to let this dry. We're going to come back and add some details to this, but I'm going to move on. So I like the blocks for doing big washes and using them as right from the block, taking my brush, dropping it in. I'm also going to use it for splatter in a little bit. I like using them for big washes, so I was able to cover quite a bit of area really quickly. All right, now I'm going to take these little guys off. Yeah, let's take these off. Let's work with the big pansy, and then I'm going to be using my two colors here. The two colors I'm going to use are Thistle and Lagoon. So let's take a look. Lagoon is like a violet blue, and Thistle is a little bit more of a blue magenta. So these two are really, really cool colors, and I'm going to mix them right into the petals. But first, we're going to lay down the color. So I'm going to start with the Lagoon first. And this is just kind of holding my, my pencil just wants to roll. Let me turn it over here. Just coming in, I'm holding my pencil out pretty far. And I'm just gently, like I'm very heavy-handed, friends. I know I've talked about that. But I'm applying some color to each petal. And I'm just laying in some color around the edges of the petals here. And you can see I'm not going all the way out to the edge. The reason is these are Inktense. They're very, very intense. You need very, very little color applied to get the effects that you want. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go around my petals here. And I have a medium hand here. And I'm just applying this color very easily. But you can see you can see some of the white of the paper. So there we go. Just going around the edges here. The other thing I like about Inktense is that it's very, very similar in nature to watercolor, in that you can do a lot of different techniques with it. And you can also apply many layers of it to really jack up that luminosity. All right, I'm going to come in here There's lots of really fun like mixed media techniques you can do with it too. Just love them. Okay, so got a nice application of color there. I'm going to go ahead in from the opposite side with the thistle. With the thistle. Okay, and just add from the outer edge in. And I'm just adding a little bit, and they can touch. I'm not really that worried about the colors touching, because they're going to mingle and become friends shortly as soon as I add. Oh, my fingers are sticking to the tape. There we go. I love this tape. It's really nice, and it's not going to rip my paper. Ooh, I didn't want that to be that scratchy. So I'm just going to add a little bit there. I'm adding a little bit. So we're just applying our color. This is very, very similar to how we would apply color with watercolor, with colored pencil. Right around the holiday time, we did lots, like a couple weeks of colored pencil techniques, which were super fun. So if you're new to the channel, you can catch a lot of those tutorials. So you can see that I've applied all of my color in a very, very light application. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do the hydrangeas the same way. Except for the hydrangeas, I'm going to do the big ones with thistle. And I'm going to do, these are going to stay as like a one color deal. Oop, that's Lagoon. So I want to do my little one. I'm going to pop my little one right here. We'll pop that one right on the edge. The little one is going to just be Lagoon, and this is a very small stamped image, so we don't need to apply a lot of color in order to get a big payout, because it is such a small stamped image. So let's go ahead in and apply the thistle, which is the magenta blue like color, and I'm just doing the same thing, focusing from the center out. Okay, and doing the same thing for this one. I find like coloring can be very therapeutic. You get into a rhythm of a repeated action, and it can be very, very therapeutic. So you can see most of 2 tones of color applied here, and then these 2, we're just applying 1 layer. Now here comes the magic. We're going to go in. I'm going to go in with my brush, and I'm using this smaller brush. Let's bring over a little bit. And I'm just going to start to add a little bit of water. And you can see instantly it's starting to come to life. And that's what I love about it. So this is a really controlled way. When you're using watercolor pencils or Inktense pencils or things like that, it's a really nice controlled way to get a big bang and wash of watercolor without worrying about all the washy, woolly things that can happen. Remember, watercolor only goes where the water is. Same for Inktense and the way I've applied it. It's only going to move where I push it. Oh, I just love that. So it's almost time to start planting some spring flowers. Here in Maryland, we usually wait till after Mother's Day for fear of a big, first frost, or when the last frost will happen. So usually you're safe after Mother's Day. I'm just kind of going back over some of these, and you can see that while it's still wet, I can still move some things around, which makes it kind of fun. But pansies are one of those cold. They do well in the cold, or they will be okay in the cold. They can handle a frost here in Maryland, um, and maybe in general. So I've been thinking, like, the weather's been kind of mild but rainy. Maybe I should just go get myself a flat of pansies, just so I can put them in my flower bed and just see their bright and shiny faces. So those thoughts were part of the inspiration today. Michelle just said, looks beautiful. What a great color combo. I love it. So we're color mixing. We're mixing these colors right in our paper, right on our paper. And it's just so beautiful. And when I go buy flats of pansies, I tend to lean towards these two colors, the violets and the pinks. Oh, love. You can see how easily I'm mixing that around. Oh, I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. I'm going to leave it alone. You can see the granulation from the pigment that's in the Inktense happening. There's a little bit of that color on my brush. Loving it. Gonna leave it, gonna let it dry. Now we're gonna move on to the other two. And I'm just going to move that color out. I'm just touching it just a bit with water, and I'm moving it out to the outer edge. And just letting it be. Then I'm gonna do a little tiny little, while it's still wet. I've got this, I've shared this before, this little palette from Karen Dosh, and it's got like a little texture in it. So I'm scratching down some of that lagoon color onto it, and then I'm just gonna make a paint, make like a paste. And while that's happening, I'm gonna drop some of that color into the center of that hydrangea and let those two be friends. So I'm color mixing the lagoon and the thistle right on the paper and letting them be friends. And letting them mix and mash, sort of like what we've done over here. But because the stamp is kind of small, it gets a little hard to apply that color right in. So we're just getting our base color here. Now, as far as this little palette goes, you could use a cutting board that has that kind of texture, any kind of scratchy surface. Something, you could even use sandpaper if you wanted to. You're just getting some of that color off of the pencil and applying it down. And I'm just adding a little bit of water. You can see I'm dancing my brush around a little bit. And I'm not as super concerned about breaking up that pigment too much because I like the texture that it leaves behind. And you can see I did get a little bit of whooshing there when I dropped that Inktense in the water. So you can really get some washy watercolor effects with the Inktense. Oh, I love that. I'm loving the way that looks. All right, now let's go in and take a peek at our baby, our little baby over here. And just kind of get that color moved around. Oh boy, that's intense. So I'm going to do the same thing with the thistle. We'll take a little bit of thistle down, scratch a little bit of that down here, and just drop a little droplet of it in there and let it do its thing. Let the water carry it around and let it do its thing. Okay, so it's drying and everything is starting to dry. I love it. I think I'm probably going to keep these the way they are. But these little guys right here. So this is dried from the time I started working on it till I started working on these. I've come back to this and this is dried. So Inktense pencils dry faster than a regular watercolor pencil. And they are, like, I'm touching it and nothing is coming off. Okay, so they're permanent. Now, I've got a little bit of my color scratched out here. Let's add a little bit more. And I've got made my little pastes of color. And we're just going to go in and add a little bit more. We're going to glaze. Glazing is layering. And I'm just dropping this in wet into dry. My brush is wet, the paper is dry. So, oops. So I'm going to move that color around a little bit. I've got full control over it. So this effect is very painterly, right? We've got this painty, washy-like look. This layering, we're doing layer number 2 here, and it really jacks up that luminosity. I'm going to add a little bit of the thistle around the edge. Turn this a little bit. Just kind of come in right here. You can start to see that it's getting a little more intense. Inktense, intense with the color. Oh my gosh, those colors are so pretty. So pretty. Hello, Laura. Laura came in a little bit late. No worries. And she just said fun technique. It is fun. So I would call, like, this is, what we're doing is very, very similar to what you can do with a watercolor pencil. It's a more controlled watercolor technique. It might be something that makes you feel a little bit more comfortable if you're working with watercolor using a pencil versus paint from a tube or paint from a pan. Oh, I'm loving that. I'm going to add a little bit right here. You can see you can get this Inktense as watery, like super watery, or super intense. That's what I love about it. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that the way it is. Now, these have dried back a little bit, and they are beautiful, but I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm just going to glaze in, just dropping in just a few little random droplets just to kind of glaze a little bit more. This is a lot like that washi techniques that we've done lately with the using our inks, using our like our color inks. So Catherine just shared, I didn't get a notice. Oh wow. Yeah, you know what, Catherine, I'm not sure what goes on with YouTube sometimes with the get notified thing. Like sometimes people get an email, sometimes people don't. Sometimes people get notified and sometimes they don't. And that happens to me with people that I follow too. I get really like annoyed with the fact that it's not very consistent. Okay, I'm going to move this to the side. I'm just going to let that dry. See if I want to put a third layer of color on those, but I'm thinking right now, probably no. Now I'm going to come in to our yellow, our pretty sunny yellow mug. And I'm going to go in with the Sienna Gold. So this is pretty dry. There's a little bit of a wet spot. I'm coming around the edge here and I'm just applying. So this is another beautiful thing about working with the blocks and the pencils is that you can add some detail with the pencils and let it be. So I'm just going to add in some line work here and then add in a little bit of color. I'm holding it out pretty far. So I'm just going to kind of come in and apply some of that color right over top of the yellow. So this is, I'm going to glaze in this color. I might have made my marks a little bit too heavy-handed. We'll see. Yeah, I kind of did. So let's see if I can recover from that. So what's happening here is the layers underneath that I've already done are not moving. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some of this color down, which I don't want them to move, which is really nice. That's something you can count on with Inktense. Like those layers underneath aren't going to move. So it gives you room to glaze and add some color on top. It's just gorgeous. Love it. And I'm just going to dry brush this stuff over to the edge. And I'm going to leave that edge over here like a little bit white. So adding those layers, I'm going to take a little bit of that gold, just kind of come around the inside of the handle here, and just use that color, just create a little shadow there. It just gives it a little dimension, it pops it a little bit. Right there is where I just kind of hit it a little too hard with my pencil. And I kind of scratched into my paper a little bit, but that's okay. We're recovering. Love it. Okay. I'm going to leave that the way it is. I'm probably going to have to heat set it because I think we're ready to move to pulling our card together. Let me just go ahead and zap this real quick with some heat. There we go. Love that. Love that. So Inktense also tends to not fade back in color, where like other watercolor pencils and watercolor mediums, you're building up your layers, the colors fade back a little bit. Inktense tends to be like 2 or 3 layers and it just gets more intense in its color. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to start to assemble some of these pieces because we're going to add some more. We're going to be adding a little bit more. Thank you, Laura, for saying glad you feel better. I am feeling better. It's been a little wild with this ear infection. Just came on out of nowhere. I kind of felt it. Oopsie. I kind of felt it coming. I might have a little glue thing here. I might have to grab a different glue. There we go. Got my glue going. I'm using some Gina K glue. I really like using this glue in this bottle because it's pretty precise, and I like using this glue on the watercolor paper because if the watercolor paper is buckling in any way, it really does smooth it out. Buckling from water, it really does smooth it out. Got a little bit of a gloop right there, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of even that out a little bit. We have 32 friends watching right now. That's wild. Hello, everyone. This was sort of a mini lesson today in Inktense. Maybe a refresher for some of you. Many of you have been watching me for a while, and you know that I've talked about Inktense a couple different times. But when I was working on painting, thinking about these beautiful pansies and hydrangeas and the stamp set mashup for today, I was like, I want to do Inktense. I want to get them out because they're just so beautiful and fun to work with and easygoing to work with. Okay, now I am going to do some stamping. I'm going to do some stamping of some Leafery that's going to kind of be popping out in this direction. So I've got some Leafery pieces. As you know, my stamp sets are chock full of Leafery. So I've got these 2 Leafery pieces from Wildflowers and Weeds, and then I have this Viola Bloom that we're going to be using in the prickly pear from Wildflowers and Weeds. And I'm going to use fresh asparagus because now we're going to start getting into doing that contrast between our warm greens and our cool blues. So I'm leaving this pansy here. Pansies have such a happy face to them. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to the center in a moment. But I think I want that pansy to just kind of be leaning in this direction towards us. I'm going to take some fresh asparagus and I'm going to move that pansy. I'm inking up my Leafery, and I want that Leafery piece to look like it's coming out of our cup and just kind of a really big stemmed piece of Leafery. So just kind of eyeball that. I love that fresh asparagus. It's such a beautiful color. It's such a beautiful color. Hi, Kathy. Who's popping in for a quick minute. Very cool. We'll see on the replay. No worries. Okay, so I'm popping that back there. And the reason why I'm using this piece of Leafery is because it's got the outlines. So we've got the solid, and we have the outline, the silhouette kind of version, and it ends up giving you some contrast between lights and darks. So we're going to come out here. So I'm going to move this and just kind of eyeball this right there and let that be. And that gave me my position for where I wanted to put my pansy and also where I wanted to put my Leafery. So let's go ahead in. I'm going to take a little bit of tape, a little bit of foam tape, and we're going to pop down the pansy, and that's going to give me my positioning for my other three hydrangeas. Oh, pansies are such just happy flowers. Look at them. Their faces, they're just so fun. Okay, then I'm going to lay this one down and pop this one up. I'm actually popping up all of my little hydrangeas. Let's take this piece, kind of pop that there. Let's take that off. Popping them all up, giving them a little dimension. But we're going to get that last little stamped piece in first. Let's go ahead and I can be all thumbs when it's time to get this paper backing off. Always fun. Okay, now I'm going to pop this one down right here. Ooh, love it. Love that. And I am having it come up and over the pansy. Now I want to come in with this little viola bloom. This little tiny viola bloom. And I'm going to use Prickly Pear. Seems counterintuitive color-wise. But I know that I'm going to have this piece kind of like right here. And I've got my other piece right here. So let's go ahead and pop this one on. Love that. Loving that. And I know that I want that bloom to kind of be nested up around here. Now, this tail, I'm taking that ink off because we're not going to see it. And I just want that bloom to just kind of be up there. Kind of just behind the hydrangeas. And when I put this little guy in, so cute. It's just going to kind of pop up right into it. That little V that's happening right here just kind of leads your eye to that little bloom that's happening. And the reason why I popped that bloom in and we're not going to color it in is because we've got some color things going on here. We also have some solids and some lines happening. So for the design, we've got a nice color contrast happening between that prickly pear and that sienna gold and the yellow that we have happening here. We've got solids here, lines here, and some more lines here that are giving us a nice contrast between our solid colors and our line art. And all of the colors, because we've got warm and we've got cool colors playing well together here. We've got a lot of contrast and a lot of pop happening. Now the other Leafery points that I'm going to pop in, I've got these two pieces of Leafery that I already stamped and pre-cut. So that was this little mint leaf right here from Be Encouraged and this solid leaf from Wildflowers and Weeds. We're just going to take a little tiny bit of glue and pop that right on here. Pop that right underneath here. So I'm drawing your eye down. So we've got this angular kind of thing happening with the Leafery and the bloom that's popping out off of the edge of our paper. And then just take this little mint leaf right here. Oh, that's a little bit of glue there. and pop that right in right here. So it breaks the shape of our card and just kind of pops out into that jelly bean green a little bit. And I really love that. Love that. Okay, sentiment wise, I used You've Got This. We also have Be Encouraged. I think I'm going to use the You've Got This. I love that. I love that sentiment. I say this a lot to people. You've got this. You can do this. So this is a perfect sentiment and a perfect card project for someone that you want to give a little extra encouragement to a friend. I'm going to ink this up with some obsidian, and I'm just going full on rogue, and I'm going to stamp it right at that base of where the handle meets the bottom of the cup. And I just went rogue. Could have got the Misty out, could have got a ruler, could have lined a bunch of things up. Didn't do it. Went rogue. I like to do that sometimes. Okay, now the yellow. I want to bring some of that yellow back in. I'm going to use Sicilian yellow and just do a quick little color of the center here. And then touch it with the brush. Brush is not super wet. Don't love that. Let's go back in. Let's take a little bit with this. And this little yellow, little pop of yellow in the center also helps kind of draw your eye right back up from the yellow here. Now I'm trying to be pretty mindful of not getting into the purple too much. Hi, Robbie. She said she's late. No worries. We always have the replay. I'm going to grab a little bit of this yellow from the Inktense. Now, in watercolor, I do this very often. I'll grab yellow at the end in flowers, at the very tip of the flower, adding a little bit of water just to a couple spots very randomly. And I'll drop just the tiniest little bit of yellow in. And what it does is it jacks up the luminosity of the tip of the flower, and it adds that level of sunlight. I call it a little level of sunlight to the tip of the flower. Oh, I love that. I'm loving the way that it looks. Michelle just asked a question. That's a great question, Michelle. Do you ever watercolor on the inside of the card? How do you finish the inside? Oh, great question. I actually have never watercolored on the inside of a card. Sometimes if I keep the insides of my cards super simple because I tend to write. So I always do the sentiment like on the front. If I'm doing a no sentiment card, I will put the sentiment on the inside. But I tend to write a lot in my cards. So yeah, that's kind of how I handle it. But you give me an idea. Like you could do a couple extra little flowers in watercolor and just kind of pop them in there as a little decorative element. I tend to forget about the insides of the cards. It's kind of wild. But you've now given me some ideas. So Sue just asked, do you ever stick your pencil in the water and then color it with a wet pencil? Yeah, we can totally do that. And yeah, I've done that. But here's one of the things about doing that. And I'm dipping I'm dipping thistle into the water. You got to be pretty light-handed. You can see that it activates really quickly right out of the gate, but it also leaves a lot of that texture, and a lot of that texture is a little harder to blend out sometimes. It's blending out pretty well, but it can be harder to blend out if you're heavy-handed, because you can start to go a little too hard into the fiber of the paper, and it'll leave that texture. But this is great. You can totally easily do that. See, if I go a little heavier handed, like I just did, it gets pretty hard for me to make that scratch go away, which, you know, is not bad. It's a nice texture. Same thing with the Inktense blocks. You can drop them in water. Just drop them in water and just kind of use them that way. So they're fun. You can do that with any watercolor pencil, any watercolor crayon, anything like that. Dip them right into the water. You could also use your pencil, just take it right from your brush and use it as your paint. Okay, now I'm going to just finish this card off really simply with doing a few little splatters with my brushes wet, and I'm just going to get the tip of this wet, and I'm just going to splatter off. I think I need a bigger brush. I might need a bigger brush. No. Oops. No, we didn't. We hit it. Just using and just flicking from the Inktense block and getting my splatter effect from it, which is kind of cool. And this is all going to dry and just be so super pretty. Let's bring this up and let's take a look at the colors. So those colors are really super intense, but you can see some of the granulation from the pencil is still there. I didn't like super washy blend it out, and that little bit of granulation that's left behind just adds to the texture of the card. So again, the stamps are the star of the show. We've added no height to the card, but we've added a lot of texture and dimension. Oh, love it. Okay, let's pop back to the front. That card was super fun. I really had a lot of fun. I hope you got a lot out of just some of the tips and tricks that I shared with using Inktense and doing some easygoing painterly watercolor effects. Really easy going. I have quite a few tutorials on this channel about Inktense, and I'm also thinking about expanding and putting them into some other classes in my channel. And my Craft Your Joy classroom. So, okay, and we did everything in an hour, which is very cool. I hope you really enjoyed today's card project, and I'm sending you into the weekend to Craft Your Joy. If you are at all interested in finding out all the things related to me and my releases with Gina K, I would love to have you in my community and on my email list. All of the information about my free classroom community is down below in the description, and the link for my email list is also there. I have a new stamp set coming out with Gina K. I'm really excited for this one. I know I say that all the time, but our release is coming out not next week, but the week after. So April 4th, we're going to be on April 4th at 7 p.m. And I'm really excited. So I'm knee deep in making lots of samples and things for that release. I will be live next week. So I would love to hear from you if there's something that you would like me to share. But I will be live next week with a new stamp set mashup and some new techniques that I'm thinking about sharing. So I'm working them out in my brain. So, okay, I'm seeing everybody shared. Thank you. Really enjoyable, really kind of easygoing. Oh, Tony, very nice. So give us a hint on the new set. Okay. Yellow. That's all I'm going to say. Yellow. I'm really excited about this set. There's a flower involved because, you know, there always is. And it's just super fun. Really versatile. And yellow was the inspiration for this new stamp set that's coming out. So I'm excited. And of course, it works in proportion to all of my other stamp sets. So it's very exciting. So, okay, friends. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have a great weekend, and don't forget to subscribe and all those things that make it really fun to keep coming back to YouTube to watch me in these tutorials. So I hope you have a really great weekend, and I'll see you next time.